that was just, I have one word, two syllables, awesome. You know, Elijah, this clip that we just watched here, what if someone were to walk up to you and say, hey, what do you think about Bethune-Cookman's Drumline sudden impact? What would you say to them?
Two words, nasty.
Nasty. Okay. You know, I agree.
Clean, nice rhythms, intimidating, on point.
Yeah, on point. And I've heard they've been called, the Navy SEALs of HBCU drumlines, and rightfully so. Listen, friends, attack is imminent. They are when they put their drums on, they are ready to do work. That's all I can say. But let's get on into it. My name is Ricardo. This is HBCU Drumline Talk, and I'm joined by my brother in percussion, EP the Great, also known as Elijah Powell. And today, friends, you don't have to believe us. We have the man who's in front of the whole thing, Mr. Professor Pedro Orey, who's a percussion instructor at Bethune-Cookman Universities and also over Sudden Impact's Drumline. So we're going to go ahead and take off and get started here. So Professor Orey, if you can, talk with us about your journey with percussion and how you landed the job at Bethune-Cookman University as percussion instructor.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for having me on. It's definitely a great honor. But my journey, I actually didn't start out in percussion. I actually started out as a string player. Fifth grade, there was an initiative in Jackson. I'm from Jackson, Mississippi. So there was this cultural initiatives that they were trying to develop string programs. And I don't know if this was a statewide situation or not, but when I was in fifth grade, hey, they came to the school, introduced the strings program to us, and a couple of my buddies decided they were going to get in. So I got in, I started playing cello. So fast forward a couple of years, at that time, it was called junior high school. It was 7th through 8th grade. I think most of the schools here in Florida start 6th to 8th. Yeah. So I'm from Jackson. We have a family rivalry, so to speak. I have family that have gone to Jackson State, Mississippi Valley State, and Alcorn. So we're a good bonded family until that Saturday of that football game. Then it's blood, sweat, and tears. You stay on your side of the table, I stay on mine. So being in that situation, going to those games, I'm hearing the drums all the time, so I'm attracted to the drums. All right, so start school, it's time to join the music program. Band director says, well, who wants to be in the band, et cetera. Of course, they give you a little music test. So the band director is looking for wind players. Everybody wants to play drums. So initially, he wouldn't allow me to play drums. So I kind of had to finagle my way. And my mom probably, had some discussions in there and say, well, he really wants to do this or something of that nature. So I started there, and I had a real slow start, really, in percussion. There were a lot of guys that were, they just got it. When I say they just got it from a reading standpoint, I had a lot of great guys. So going through that, my whole junior high school year, it was just about, I heard the college band playing a marching cadence. That's what I want to do. Reading wasn't on my mind. It was just, hey, I heard this and I'm going to play it. So at that time, we were probably one of the few junior high schools that had a marching band. Okay. So it wasn't really a prevalent thing at that time. So the only thing, the junior high school was Brinkley Junior High. So we would march out on the football field and we'd make this letter B. So that was a big deal. This block B, make this block B. So the only thing I cared about, we're going to march to this drum cadence, we're going to play. So band director said, look, you can play all the drum cadence you want as long as you can write them out. So nobody can write it out. So we couldn't just practice the drum cadence. So again, going through that thing and just getting pushed a little bit. So once I entered high school, 10th grade, we entered high school, and high school was kind of core style high school. So we had a variety of high schools, had some quote unquote traditional programs, but they were kind of hybrid at that point, because when you went to state competition, you couldn't do the traditional HBCU kind of things. You had to kind of conform to what they wanted in that arena. So a lot of the schools would kind of, at that time, do a little hybrid of both so they could prepare themselves for the contest. Well, when I got to 10th grade, well, now I'm on tonal bass drum. All right. I can't really read rhythm, so someone has to play the rhythm so that I can actually figure out what it is. So I'm out there, we're going through it, band director's out there, we're playing probably some simple rhythms. I got it. He turns around, take 2 steps, I lose it. So when we had a change of directors when I was in 11th grade. A young lady by the name of Karen Wilson. She took me by her side and said, well, look, I'm going to help you play. You really want to learn, because I was energetic. And in the 10th grade, we had 2 guys that were on the snare line that really kind of worked with me a little bit. So I was kind of coming along a little bit. And one of the things that I would always have these guys that they thought they were putting me down. And I always took that as positive criticism. And it just drove me to work a little bit hard. So yes, I don't know this, but hey, I need to know. So I had these other guys that say, well, hey man, anytime you need help, I started opening up the method books, a lot of things I couldn't do, but I started progress. 11th grade, young lady becomes the band director. She takes me to the side. Now I'm starting to understand stuff. Now she started to say, well, hey, here's a mallet book. Okay. Next thing you know, I'm playing in the drum feature, we had a mallet solo. I'm out on the field playing the mallet solo. So it started to kind of progress from there. And so we used to have, like, now everybody has these drum battles that you're online and everybody's, doing the YouTube things. Well, at that time in high school, a lot of the guys that was going to different high schools, all of us were at the same junior high school, but you went to high school here or there. So you had let's just say the north side and the south side. Okay. So you kind of had this rivalry kind of thing, because the guys on the north side thought they were better than the guys on the south side, vice versa. So all the guys on my side of town, every Friday night after the game, we'd meet up at this McDonald's. So it's like a crowded thing, and we're going at it. You may get me today, but shoot, I'm going to get you tomorrow. But at the end, hey, can you show me what you just did? And we were, at that time, guys were trying to help each other. We were just learning. We were trying to go at it, but we were trying to learn. So sometimes I'm on the phone with a guy. Hey, man, tap that rhythm out that you played the other night. Somebody's calling me. So we didn't have a social media thing, or we meet up at somebody's house, what have you. So from there, I got into it. Then I was attracted to, like I say, Jackson State, Alcorn, and Mississippi Valley, because those are schools in the state of Mississippi. I've seen some of the other colleges and universities, but those were the schools that I saw all the time. So everything that we did in high school from a performance standpoint, it would emulate those schools, and then coming from chord thing, we would kind of get into some things from there as well. So I went on from there, went on to Mississippi Valley State, and I ended up going there because my parents were alumnus of the school. So even though I had other family, Jackson State was actually, less than a mile from my grandparents' house. So I was always on the campus of Jackson State. My uncles, we weren't going to a football game, we're going to a baseball game or something. So I was always around the school. So for me, that influence that I had there, the influence of Valley, is kind of led me to where I am now. So from Valley, got into it, and when I got to Valley, some of those guys that was on the line, man, I mean, man, they were amazing guys. Because we had a lot of cats that came out of East St. Louis, and a lot of those guys, they were kind of doing some of the core stuff at the time. And they were just flat out playing. So from there, I graduated from Valley, then went to study at Eastern Illinois with Johnny Lane, who everybody knows. And, he helped me kind of refine my skills a little bit more. And from there, his contacts with some of the directors, my first application for a job, I think they call it the AU Center in Atlanta. I had aspirations of going to Atlanta and being a percussion instructor for all those 4 schools in that area. And it was like, hey, man, they don't have a percussion instructor. I can go in and I can teach some guys and this, and this. So sent my letter of interest, no response. So, he kept going. So Johnny had a connection with the band director at Bethune-Cookman at the time, Dr. Harold Bray. And so it just so happened the year that I was graduating, they were looking for a percussion instructor. So the timing, happened, at the right time. So I came down and interviewed for the position. And as far as the job is concerned, everything from there is history. So, I came here, I think I was like 22, 24, something like that. And, it was kind of like, hey, let's go get it.
Sounds good to me. Can I ask Professor Orey, what year was that?
When you say what year?
Yeah, what year was that when you came to Bethune-Cookman?
I was 1986.
1986.
Yeah, so most of your viewers probably wasn't born at that time.
It's okay, but we're going to bring them up to date. Before we get into the next setup, I want you guys to check this out. This is from 1992. It's a drum cadence called Orey's Groove. Wow, that was pretty good. That was pretty good. That was a nice look. One thing that I like about that video, if you take a look at it, it was 1992 with the camcorder. You still had the time stamp on it. It reminded me of the 90s were such a great time. Let's get into question number 2.
All right, so please talk to us about the audition process for Sudden Impact and how that process has changed over the years.
Okay, starting out, when I initially arrived here, I was trying to establish my philosophy with the drumline. So prior to me arriving, they didn't have a percussion instructor that worked with them consistently. So from my understanding, prior to the year before I arrived, they had a good drumline. So they had a student leader, and he really, had them, pretty tight. So when I arrived, we had a situation of now trying to establish my philosophies and those kinds of things. So going through the audition process, it was kind of pretty simple at that time, because everybody, It would just go, okay, let's see you play some rudiments and let's kind of do some sight reading. If you had a prepared piece, we will listen to that. So it was really just kind of fundamental. All right. So we're trying to establish, when you come to college, you need to have these set of skills. Okay. And at that time, the state of Florida, just like a lot of states, I mean, you had some great high school bands. I mean, when I say great high school bands, these guys were playing, they had numbers. So it was, you could just stay in the state of Florida and recruit. You know, you didn't have to go outside the state of Florida because, like I said, you had a lot of great bands, you know, with good numbers. But specifically with the audition process, like I say, we would start out, at that time, it was just the 26 American rudiments that we would actually be looking for. And we'll select some of, you know, at random, some of those rudiments just to see where you were. And then, you know, go through some sight reading. And that's pretty much it. So if we look at now where we are, we kind of go a little bit more in depth. So as the program started to evolve, and we started to evolve with the drumline and that kind of thing, so we still had those same things, but now what we do, we like everybody to prepare their audition on snare drum. Okay, so fundamentally, it's my philosophy that everybody should have some fundamental chops. Okay, and we're trying to get out of a situation where I just play cymbals or I just play bass drum. So my journey here has always been educational. Okay, so everything you've seen me do with the drumline, it's a lot of things that has to do with me trying to teach somebody something. It's not always directly about the drumline, so to speak. So now when we audition students, we're looking for students to go through the 40 international rudiments. I don't address the hybrid rudiments as much, even though we play a lot of them. My view is if I can get you to play the international rudiments, we'll change the sticking and we'll make it a hybrid rudiment. And so you should have a prepared snare drum piece that should be a grade 4 or 5. And then if you have some other skill sets. So unfortunately here, we're a small university. So most of our students have to multitask. So, you know, you're going to be in the marching band, you're going to be in the jazz band, you're going to be in the concert band, you're going to be in the percussion ensemble, and you're going to be in any other ensemble that we dream of at the time. So, you know, we're a small university, so, you know, we have to, you know, kind of multitask on these things. So when we audition kids, we have that basic snare drum audition. Then we have a situation where we say, well, what are those? Do you have any other skill sets? Okay. Do you play timpani? Do you play the mallet instruments? Do you play the drum set? So now that lets me know what kind of flexibility I have in terms of incorporating you in the total program. So everyone has to participate in marching band, of course, and then you're going to be placed in one of the concert bands that we have. And then we branch out into the percussion ensemble and that kind of thing. So with percussion ensemble, we have majors as well as non-majors.
Okay, that's really good.
Okay, incoming freshman, you heard it, you know, from the man's mouth. If you want to audition, this is what you have to look forward to. Very good.
Yeah,
and can I make mention of one thing?
Yeah.
My challenge with our students at this point in time, I tell my guys, and I'm being facetious when I say this, you can't really play. Okay, so what do I mean by you can't really play? We go on YouTube and we find this snare drum solo lick or what have you, and we learn that. Okay, so I have a student that will audition for me, and you'll play this hot lick, and I'm looking at this kid, I'm saying, man, shoot, if we get 2 more guys that's on your level, man, we really are ready to play. Challenge being, they can't transfer what they're doing in that solo to beginner band book number 1. They don't understand the correlation between 1 and 2. So from an audition standpoint, it's kind of a tricky thing sometimes, because you'll have a guy that has some chops or seem like they have some chops, but they can only play that one thing. Okay, they can only play that 5-stroke roll, or they can only play that cheese. But if I put a paradiddle in there, they struggle. They don't understand conceptually how one thing relates to the other. So, like I say, an audition process, that's one of the things, collectively, like I say, as we educate our students. So when I talk to some of the guys from here, and even when I talk to other guys from other colleges that have YouTube page, I say, try to educate the people that are watching your videos. The stick twirl, the flare, that's the icing on the cake. They need to understand, how did you get there? Because before you twirled that stick, you had to go through some fundamental things. Before you played that flam paradiddle, you had to go through some fundamental things. So that's kind of, as we look at the process of auditioning, that's one of the challenges, that I see that we have in terms of guys going on YouTube. Now, YouTube is great because instant you can see almost anything. So I think it's great, but now we need to understand conceptually how to transfer.
Yes, sir. Good.
That's a lot of good information, Professor Orey. And speaking of icing on the cake, as you put it, before we get into this next setup here, you guys have done some great things throughout the years, right? And we've already talked about the audition process and how it's changed and how you've changed that process over the years. But we really want to dig deep into this next question. So talk to us about the evolution of Sudden Impact's look and sound from the early 90s to the present. And before we actually get into your answer, let's take a look at a video from Sudden Impact's 1992 stick control and compare that with 2021's most recent stick control.
Okay, so you have two clips, and you can kind of see the evolution of the drum line. All right, but we can't start in 1992. We have to go to 1996 when I first arrived. So drumming, when we first arrived, we had Ludwig drums. So on the 92 clip, you see the Ludwig drums, I believe. Yeah, Ludwig drums. That's the drum, 15 inches for snares, that I wish we had now. Okay?
They sound good. They did sound good.
The 15-inch snare drum, going from a 14-inch to a 15-inch, and you can even get to a 16. It gives us a fatter sound. Okay. Now, relationship-wise, and we look at frequency, and this is just me talking. People that look like me, they're round. I view them as a circle. Some people that don't look like me, I view them as a square. Okay. Now, that's not to say one is better than the other, or one is good and one is bad, but I think it's the sound. So when I hear something, I'm looking for a low pitch. I'm looking for a dark color. Okay. But when the square hears something, they're looking for a bright color. They're looking for a high pitch color. Okay. So now when we look at what we do in the HBCU world, we want that fat sound. Like when we hit the drum set, when you're in church, you looking for 2 and 4 on that snare drum. I don't care what they play, you want to hear that pop. You looking for that rim shot. That's that 15, 16-inch snare drum. Okay, it just carries across the field. All right. So when we look at the evolution from then to now, the challenge that I had was, what type of sound do we want consistently? Okay, so let's start with the bass drum. All right, we have some drum lines. When you hit the bass drum, you hear the bass drum vibrate 24 days later. It just gives you a nice, rich sound. It's a nice sound. Okay, then you have some drum lines that's kind of in the middle. Well, my challenge was, I wanted that sound of that bass drum that has a reverb of 24 days later. But I don't want it to ring 24 days. So that was my dilemma. So I had to decide, do I want a short sound that's going to give me articulation because of the things that we're trying to play, or do I want a more open sound that I won't be able to articulate as much? So I had to give up one for the other. So I like the big booming sound, but I don't get the articulation. So with our bass drums, we try to have it where it's a little bit more dry than a more open sound. Okay. So we look at stick control. All right. When I initially started writing, everything I wrote for the drum line, it was trying to force the guys to play certain things, or trying to teach them to play certain things. So stick control was one of the first things that I wrote when I arrived here. Well, coming from Valley, we were doing some things drumming wise that we were not doing here at Bethune-Cookman. So let's just take backsticking. Okay. When I arrived, the way that we were doing backsticking was okay. They knew how to backstick, but I wanted to teach them a different way to do backsticking. So on the side, I work with the guys and I said, okay, we're going to learn how to play a flam. We're going to learn how to play this. We're going to learn how to play that. But the guys would never practice. As long as I had them, we'll go through it. But they would never practice. So I'd say the only way I'm going to get you to do something is to write. So stick control came out of me trying to teach the guys how to play flams properly. Okay. And that word properly, it's in context. What do you consider proper versus what I'm considered proper?
Right, of course.
But I wanted to teach them how to get a good flam sound and not a flat flam sound. So in stick control, we start out with the flam. Okay, it has, now stick control actually had an introduction to it. For some reason, I can't remember why we stopped playing that introduction. I don't, it just kind of fell off. But what you hear there, it starts out, it only has a couple of flams in it because I was trying to teach the guys how to play flams, so I couldn't put a bunch of them in there. Yeah. All right. Then I said, well, when I was at Valley, we used to do these samurai things all the time. So I'd say, let me introduce this to the guys, because in our community, we really wasn't doing a lot of that. You may have had sprinkles of drum lines doing it, but it wasn't a lot at the time. So I say, I'm going to teach you that. So when I initially started teaching them how to play on samurai, they was like, we don't do that, man. That's other folk. We don't do that. I've always been in an educational situation. Drumming is drumming to me. We get into a core style and a traditional style. My question is, can you play? That's just where I view things, okay? Stylistically, we may have some things going on, but I just view it as playing because when I was growing up, it was this guy saying, okay, here's a method book, here's a piece of music, play. It didn't matter. So going back to stick control, we had the flams that we were trying to incorporate. Then my years watching drum corps, I was always fascinated with the accelerando. Okay. So it's like, hey man, I'm gonna do this accelerando. So we tried to do an accelerando and I couldn't figure out how to get those guys to do it. And it would just always just go off the rails. So I sat down one day and I said, well, I'm going to take this double stroke roll and we got to make it sound like it's getting faster without us getting faster. Okay, the time is still the same. So I finally figured out I can go from eighth notes, then I go to triplet eighth notes, then double the triplets, then I go to 16 notes, 30 seconds. And so, but we can keep the same time and tempo, but it gives the illusion that the roll is actually getting faster. So got that little piece in. Then, like I say, a lot of things came from when I was at Valley. Hutchinson Skyriders. I saw him do a drum to drum thing one year and it just stuck in my head. So I said, hey, we're going to do that. So that's how stick control came about. So with the quint part in the middle, it was like, okay, I got this ride cymbal. Now I want to try to give a little groove on the quint side while we're playing this ride cymbal, situation. So that's the way in terms of writing. Now, what you saw on the 92 versus what you saw in the latter years, we just started to refine what we were doing. So the guys started to understand. So what you saw in 92, and actually that was my camcorder. We had different shots. It's kind of amazing because I don't even remember who I gave that tape to, Yeah. But we decided we were going to record most of the drum cadences that we played at the time, and we were trying to do different angles. And of course, at that time, you didn't have the technology you have now. But we only had a few guys out of the section that actually recorded, but trying to refine our style and how we play, how we look. Okay. So guys were asking me, well, this drum line versus this drum line, the way that they play. Fundamentally for me, if I'm looking at a drum line, I don't have any preference. My question is, everybody that's in that section, that subsection, are they making the same type of stroke? If you play like we play, you play like some other drumline plays that may use a more open stroke, is it together? That's what I'm looking for. And if it's together, hey man, it works for me. I just choose to play in this manner because when I started playing, that's just the way I was taught how to play. So it's not like I looked at this group and said, I'm gonna play like this. That's just the way I learned how to play. When I started studying with Johnny Lane and we were talking about how to approach rudiments and drags and that stuff, we were talking about Frank Arsenault. And I listened to of course, at that time it was an album, and Frank Arsenault was playing these rudiments, and the sound that he had on that snare drum, man, it was just like, wow, I have to sound like that. So I started to emulate that. So again, going back to, I'm kind of getting off track, going back to stick control early, stick control late, it's just a refinement. So we've kind of, some parts we kind of tweaked and say, okay, hey, let's change this to this or whatever the case may be. And it kind of morphed a little bit, but fundamental is still, the same cadence that we played early on. Again, just the refinement is what we looked at.
Yeah, that was really well put and really well spoken at that point, because those are two videos that really shows, hey, this is naturally how a drumline is supposed to evolve, right? It's not supposed to stay the same. It's supposed to just, get progressively, better, I would say, or just cleaner.
Right.
So good,
right.
Good. So you touched on this next question I'm about to ask a little bit earlier. Please talk to us about the expectations you have for your student leaders in the drumline.
Well, the student leaders, I look at the student leaders as an extension of the band staff. Okay. So it's the band staff, there's our drum majors, then it's the section leaders. Okay. So whatever the band staff is trying to develop at that time, everybody should be emphasizing that same thing throughout the chain. All right. So specifically with the drum line, early on when I initially arrived here, I had trying to teach discipline to the drum line. So one of the things that the guys we used to go back and forth with is that I used to make the guys clean their drums every Friday. And when I say clean the drum, we actually physically took the whole drum apart, which is what, we used to do that at Valley. We used to take the drums apart and put them back together and clean them, but of course we were doing it more regular, so it didn't need it as much. But every Friday we took the drums literally apart, and so they was like, well, man, you're being childish or whatever, you this and this. So they used to always fight against it because, it was timely. But look, you're going to polish this drum on Friday and it's going to be ready to go. It's going to look good on Saturday. So that's one of the things that we expect the section leaders to do. So early on, I used to have to be hands-on with the drum line. If the drum line went outside to practice, I had to go outside and practice. Because if I didn't go out there with them, hey, there's no telling, they may be out there watching movies, eating popcorn, anything,
Yeah.
They may be out there throwing a football. So early on, trying to teach them the discipline that say, guys, look, you're great. You have the talent. Now we just have to focus it. And it wasn't that they were, bad guys or anything. It took some time to get them to understand, okay, this is where I'm trying to get you to go. So with the student leaders, like I say, we're expecting you to be the band director when the band directors are not around, when the drum majors are not around. We're expecting you to guide the students. So one of the things we try to do is have the section leaders encouraging the younger guys, hey, look, man, you need to go to class, okay? We need to be doing this. We need to make sure we are on the positive side, okay? So you can look at it from a selfish standpoint. And I tell guys all the time, I say the easiest thing for me to do is to get you here, you play a couple of years, and then you're gone. The hardest thing for me to do is to get you here as a freshman, and I start crying 4 years later because you're walking across that stage with a degree. That's the hardest thing. That's my goal. My goal is not to just use you for a couple of years, whatever the case may be, then say, hey, I'm going to get somebody else. So I look at that as a failure for myself. So that's what we try to do with the leaders, is try to corral the younger guys as well as some of the older guys, say, hey, look, man, we have to make sure we're doing things that's going to better ourselves. It's going to push us to the next step. So I'm always fussing about that. And then, like I say, anything that happens, I mean, sometimes, section leaders have to be, you know, mom and dad. You know, if they can't handle something, they bring it to me. But you have that same weight that I have. Okay, it's just on a little smaller scale. So again, you need to be a leader. I've had situations where, you know, I've had section leaders that have, they haven't lived up to the standard. I've had to change some section leaders. So, you know, sometimes you select a person and they do well, but it's something about when they arrive as a section leader, you know, that push that they had prior to, they lose it. So you have to kind of regroup and adjust and that kind of thing. So again, with the leaders, you know, like I say, and then even from a standpoint of writing for the line, orchestrating for what we do in terms of the band program, as I stated earlier, is that we try to teach them, be in an educational situation. My thought process is one day you're going to have your own group. Whether you're a music major or not, you're going to be over a group of people somewhere, and you need to understand how to organize. So I'll give them tasks and I'll say, okay, hey, you need to do this. All right. Well, I couldn't get it done. I say, well, that's an excuse. The job still has to be done because we need to be able to do this at this point in time. So if you don't get it done, we didn't achieve the goal. We can't meet the performance standards. So again, everything that the staff does, we expect the leaders to do the same thing.
Okay, good answer.
That's really good information there. So we want to kind of transition now. And one thing that I want to talk to you about, you guys have been doing this Florida Classic thing for quite a long time. And I've been watching this, you know, from a distance, and you guys have been just magnificent. And I think before we get into the next setup here, let's take a look at some videos from the Florida Classic throughout the years.
Okay.
Okay, great, friends. You guys got a great opportunity to take a look at some of the things that Bethune-Cookman Sudden Impact did, you know, with their floor shows throughout the years. But I think what we want to ask throughout the years, how involved have your students in the drumline been in creating the floor routine for the Florida Classic?
Well, the students are very involved. Again, my principle the whole time I've been here is trying to teach them things. So a lot of times what I'll do, we'll have a meeting. I'll say, okay, stylistically, this is what I want the drum feature for the classic to be, okay? Now, my intent every year is to start writing something for the drum feature in August, okay? I think I kind of did that once. So usually 2 weeks before the classic is when we really start working on it. And sometimes it's like less than that. But what we try to do is to write a skeleton of what's going on. And then I'll tell the guys, okay, well, look, what I want you to do, I want you to develop this snare drum solo, or I want this kind of groove here. So I'll write something so that everything's matching up. You understand stylistically, you have to be in this box, okay? So from there, you know, it's just a melting pot of what we do. there's been a couple of years where I've told the guys, if we play this weekend, if you don't write it, we'll be sitting in the stands. And they don't take me seriously until they say, well, hey, he's still in his office. He hadn't come out of his office, so we need to do something. So we've had some guys, take some initiative, but every year there's a lot of input from the students. Early on when we used to do the features, I used to write everything, okay? But again, my philosophy is that this is an educational process. You need to understand how to, do these things. And so we've had a lot of guys, say, hey, I came up with this, how did this work? I've written things for the feature, and, it's like, well, this is not clicking with this. It's okay. And we exit out. So I let the guys know that there's not a good idea or bad idea. It's just what fits what we're trying to do now. So we may be able to use this for something else, but it may not fit. There's some things that I would like to do that's, hey, we're running out of time, okay? So with it, when we kind of have movement and that kind of thing, sometimes we'll, depending on the time frame that we have, so we'll try to work up the drum feature itself musically. Then from there, we'll try to incorporate the movement that we want. So we may have some movement that we want to do, but we may still need to work up the parts. Sometimes we don't have enough time to infuse the movement that we want because it took us a while to get the parts together. So sometimes we'll just stand, hey, we're just gonna play today. Sometimes the guys, they get upset about it. They say, no, we can still do it. I say, well, you're gonna cram a lot of stuff and then you're gonna crash and burn. So the students have a lot of input in terms of what we're doing. I've been fortunate over the years, like we say, we look at the 92 video and we see how the line has progressed. Yeah. I've been fortunate where I don't have to write everything for the line, okay? So I got a lot of great, talented guys that, write things for the line. And, so it's like, okay, hey, if you could do it, then that's less that I have. Now I can put my energies in another direction. So it's a compilation of what we've done over the years in terms of getting the students involved, and it kind of has, grown. So like I say, I've been fortunate, from that aspect.
I think that's really great. One thing that you mentioned that I want to talk about is that, for our students out there, incoming freshmen who are in high school, really looking at a program, your program seems like it's like one that, hey, I can go to and make a difference. I have an input, I put the work in, and there's some things that I can really do and add to the line, and it would make a difference.
Yeah, definitely.
That's really good. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Okay, going into the next question. Everybody knows I'm a world percussionist. As far as what I like to listen to. I play congas, different stuff like that. So I love the different, 3/2 rhythms, 2/3 clave, salsa. But you guys use, the cowbell, tambourine, in the material, and it's just, and I love it. In my opinion, I love the different rhythms. So going to the next question, talk to us about how that came about, and I guess the reason why you guys, started using the cowbell tambourines in your material.
Well, the evolution of us using the cowbell and tambourine, I guess indirectly, it has to do with my tenure at Valley. If you look at 2022 Valley and you look at the 80s Valley, it's a different band program. Stylistically, we were doing, we're a totally different band program. So during the time that I was at Valley, we had what we call a Latin section. So we marched bongos, we marched congas, we marched timbales, we had shakers, we had tambourines, anything in the Latin section we had involved in that. And one of the things that attracted me to Valley, I remember as a kid going to the football games, and you would hear the drums, and you're sitting at the top of the bleacher. You hear the drums, but you don't see anything. And then as the sound got closer, you saw this little white plume and that plume would just be doing this, you know, and it would be synchronized. And then you hear all these drums. And like I said, you hear those timbales and bongos and shakers and those kind of things. So that's always been a part of me. Then, you know, when I arrived here a few years after I arrived in Bethune-Cookman, we started the steel band. So I started kind of getting that flavor. So that started, you know, we started listening to a lot of Caribbean music and that kind of thing. So it started, you know, getting, you know, becoming a part of what I was doing. So I've always liked colors, okay? One of the things that when I was in school, when I was at Valley, Ricky Burkhead, I tell him this all the time, he was an amazing writer for me from a melodic standpoint. Everything that he wrote for the drum line, I just usually always hear melodic lines. You know, now whether that was his intention or not, it just had a melodic flavor. So when we had the drum line then, we had 7 tonal basses. And at that time it was trios. So then you had the Latin section, then of course you had the snares. Prior to that, they did have march and tenor drums. So they moved from the march and tenor drums, and once they went to the trios or duos at that time they developed. So they had all these colors, but he would write, and I've just, you know, admired his writing. So that kind of stuck with me. So once I arrived here, my experiences and, you know, going to Jackson State, going to Alcorn, going to Valley, you know, all of these colors are in my head, all these sounds are in my head. So when I arrived here, I'm searching for colors. So we started out, we were using the Black Beauty cowbell on the snares, okay? So it probably took about 3 years for us to actually permanently put the cowbell on there. Because initially, when you put that cowbell on there, it added weight to the drum. So the snare guys would always complain, hey man, this is too heavy, it's too heavy. So we went from the Black Beauty cowbell, then they conned me one year, and I kind of went along with it. We had the jam bell. And the only reason why I let them use the jam bell, because I like the sound. It was a little brighter sound, but it was a thinner bell. Challenge was, since it was a smaller bell, when you played it with the drumstick, you know, durability wasn't that great, but I liked the sound. So we kind of toured around that. And then initially we had the jam blocks on the quints. So we played around with the red jam block, which is one we used most of the time. And then we had the blue one for a short period of time. And then somewhere along the way, I always say we're going to put the jam blocks back on the quints. They just phased out for some reason, and there's no rhyme or reason for it. But the tambourine and the cowbell on the snare drum, that just came out of me looking for colors. I want a different texture in the line, okay? So during that same time, I wanted to add another drum to the tenor drum. So I was looking for so I wanted a tonal tenor drum, so to speak. So during that time, Remo had the little tom drum, okay? And it was a pre-tuned head. So I was trying to figure out how could I mount that on the tenor drum and give me a different tone, okay? But I couldn't figure out how to mount it and then the durability of it. Right. So I'm always looking for colors. I'm always, every time I do some of the drum line, it's what's melodically going on is how I'm thinking. So texturally, what is this? Texturally, what is that? So right now, you know, guys don't know it, you know, we may add another piece in there to the drum line next year. I was going to do it this year, and I'll leave that as a surprise if we decide to do it. They don't know it yet, but we may add a little bit more weight, you know, to what's going on. But again, that's how the cowbell and you know, tambourine kind of developed. And like I said, I just forced the cowbell on them one year, and I just said, hey, win, lose, or draw, you just, you know, either go play flute, twirl a flag, but we're gonna put the cowbells on the snare drum.
Yes, sir.
Sounds good to me. Sounds good to me. So, well, I'll be looking forward to the surprise when you bring it out next year. I'll
Yeah.
definitely be looking forward to that. So we talked about the cowbell and the tambourines and everything. So if you can, Professor Orey, just talk to us about the choice of heads that and the sticks that you prefer to use just throughout the years.
Well, over the years, we use a lot of different brand sticks. And we've been fortunate, I guess, in the last 15 years or so, that we've actually had an endorsement from some of the drum companies. So because of those endorsements, we're using, those products. So mallet and stick wise, we're using the Vic First products. And we're using for the snare drum, we're using the Ralph Hardiman's snare drum stick. And the way that we started out with the Ralph Hardiman's, we went through some other sticks. ProMart years ago used to make a stick called the DC-10. And it was a stick, it didn't have a tip on it, just a rounded edge. It had a taper end, but it was a rounded edge. And that was kind of like a flavor of the month stick for a little while. But the challenge with it is that when you hit a rim shot or something, the stick would crack. So we had that situation with a lot of brand sticks that we were using. And it was like, well, we start playing, what can we do? We need something that's going to be a little bit more durable. So when we started the endorsement with Vic First and we started with Ralph's stick, we're using the wood tip. And we like the stick, I prefer the wood tip on the snare drum. But since we were doing a lot of cymbal ride stuff, I like the nylon tip because it cuts a little bit better than the wood tip. So we started using the nylon tip stick versus the wood tip stick. Then with the mallets, at the time, Vic First wasn't making the tenor drum mallet. Then they talked to me about the Groove series. Okay, so we initially started talking about the Groove series, and we were talking about the development and what I thought would be appropriate mallet for it and that kind of thing. So we helped them develop that series of mallets, and with that it was like, okay, hey, in our situation we spin the mallets. Okay, some drum lines, they don't have the strings on the mallets, but in our situation we've always had used that from a visual standpoint. And that's something they were actually doing prior to me arriving. So we kept that tradition and, just tried to enhance it over the years. So when we were approached by Vic First in terms of developing the stick, trying to find something that had a shaft that was long enough that we could actually use to play on the tenor drums, but it wasn't too short or too long. So we came up with a happy medium. One of the things when I was in, it's kind of going back to high school and specifically Jackson State at the time, they were using probably a Ludwig quad mallet on tenor drums. At least and I could be wrong, but that's visually what I see it, because it was a long mallet, but it had a smaller head on it. And that's what they were using on the tenor drums. Like I say, visually, I was a lot younger then, so I may be a little bit off. But listening to the sound of trying to have a mallet that gives us a good tone on the drum versus when it's kind of like when you're playing drum set. I wouldn't use a marching stick on the drum set because it's just too much surface. So I want a smaller stick to give me a little brighter sound. So that's the way we viewed the tenor drum mallet. So in that we had a tenor drum mallet in the Groove series, then we had the tonal bass drum mallet in the Groove series, and then we had the Scotch bass mallet as well. So those were the mallets that we were using with that. Unfortunately, they discontinued the Groove series this year. And so we're now in discussion with Vic First in terms of actually modifying some things to still adapt to what we're trying to do from a tenor drum standpoint. So like I say, some drum lines, their mallets, they may be the length of the snare drum stick with a head on it. I prefer just for the tenor drum, I prefer just a little shorter stick. And some of that has to do with us twirling the mallets, because the longer the shaft on the stick, when you start twirling it, it's kind of challenging, from that standpoint. So having a little shorter rod on the stick allows us to, have a little bit more flexibility in twirling. So that sticks and mallets, like I say, we've been fortunate that Vic First has been supporting us, for a number of years. And so that's what we've been using. And again, going into next year, we're gonna have to modify some things with the tenor and bass. Quint-wise, we've gone through a couple of things. Tom Onks, we've used his quad mallet for a number of years, and we kind of like the sound that it actually produces. So, we're kind of, the guys were talking about touring around with some other things next year. So we'll see what other line of sticks that they have for Vic First that we use. We kind of stray away from the mallets that have, little heads on them, because the stick itself, like similar to a drumstick, it just gives us more brighter sound. It cuts a lot better than, sometimes using that felt mallet or that, I don't know the material that you use, other hard plastic, head mallet. That's kind of like a cartwheel.
Good.
You brought back memories when you said the DC-10.
Yeah.
It didn't have the tip. I hated those sticks. I hated those sticks to death.
Yeah.
I had one pair, never again.
Yeah. Well, like I say, we use them, and actually, Rob Carson comes to mind. I think Rob was with Santa Clara, and I think Santa Clara used them one year or something. It took some. It was an odd stick. It took some, getting used to when you're playing it, because I think the stick might have even been a little shorter, but it wasn't as durable. And then when we played, because we don't play as aggressive as we did early on now. So kind of having a marriage, sometimes I wish the guys were a little bit more aggressive, to push the sound through, especially the snare guys. And then sometimes you want to tone it down a little bit. So, it's kind of like that happy medium. But, that DC-10 was an interesting stick. But like I say, we're working with Ralph Hardiman's, and that's been working for us.
Yes, sir.
And that's not to say it's not, some other great sticks out there. That's just, our endorsement. So we work with it.
Yes, sir. Okay. So this next question is kind of a fun question. So if you had a month to instruct the HBCU Drumline, not BCU, for a month, who would it be?
Well, I guess I find that question interesting. I guess whichever HBCU Drumline would have me,
Good answer.
My thing would be, hey, if you think I can help your drumline, hey, I would love to work with you. There, over the years, we've been fortunate. One of my dreams has been to see great bands, great drum lines. When you show up for the game and you see a halftime show, you just know, hey, man, this is going to be a good day. Early on in my career, that wasn't the case. We had a lot of varied levels in terms of band programs, a lot of varied levels in terms of the drum lines. I have a love for all the schools. And we've been fortunate over the years that, we've been able to do a lot of different things with this band program. Some things, if I had not been associated with the program, I probably wouldn't have had the opportunity to do. We've been in movies, we've done commercials, we've done a bunch of different things. But the dynamic is, I want to see other programs, have some same opportunities, because it's a lot of great bands out there. There are a lot of great drum lines out there. And one of the challenges, I'm not a social media person. So I don't, I I go and I look at videotape sometimes on YouTube, and looking at comments about our drumline. Somebody say, well, you're not doing this, you're not doing that. And I always take a chuckle, you know, when I read a comment like that, because nobody's ever asked me, well, when you played this or when you wrote this, what were you trying to do? You know, because sometimes the thing that they're saying we're not doing, I'm not trying to do it. That's why we're not doing it. So what I would like to see now is a little bit more camaraderie amongst our community in developing our skill sets and trying to push everybody to another level. It's for me, it's disheartening emotionally when I'm reading something online about my guys in my program saying something negative about somebody else's program. And I just use us as an example. Your program saying something negative about my program. Because I don't know what it took for you to go from the band room to the field. Now, I understand what it took me to get there. I understand in Bethune-Cookman's development from the time I arrived to today, I know some of the challenges that we've overcome. So if I see a band that's not on the same level that we are, I remember when we were in that same situation. And sometimes, you know, we're in a situation, we have a dynamic where I don't know if it makes us feel better if we don't compliment someone. You know, I'm kind of like in a different space than most people. I'm very competitive. Now, if your band's on the other side of the field, you know, I want to give it to you. Now, after it's over, hey, we should be able to, you know, go and have a good time. But when you're on the other side of the field, I'm the most competitive person in the world. I hate to lose.
Like I said in the beginning, attack is imminent.
Yeah, I hate to lose. Now, I'm not a sore loser, you know, because I talk to, you know, it's real funny. Years ago, I always tell kids these stories, but years ago, Honda, when Honda first started, and we had a situation that, and I won't mention the school, but we had a situation that the guys were going back and forth online. And, you know, I to this day, I still don't understand it, because all of us are HBCU schools. I can't see me saying anything negative about your school. That doesn't make sense to me. But the guys are going back, and they asked me to help with the drum lines and set them up on the field. And a guy told me, well, I'm not standing beside this person. Now, I'm old school now. I had to, you know, I grabbed the guy. That's the only thing I know. Your butt is going right here. Okay. So at that point, you know, it's like, hey, little mouth. Well, he didn't know that me and the director were good friends. Mm-hmm. We talk all the time. So I said, well, hey, I'll put it into the director's hands. And after that, I saw the same kid some years later. And he said, Mr. Orey, now I understand. Because again, our thing is to help each other, not to try to put somebody's down. You know, again, one day you're going to get me. But that's just going to be one day. Now you're going to give me 5 days. You know, I give you one. But again, so I got to go back and work a little harder. Okay. But sometimes we're in a dynamic where we just look for that little thing to say, oh, your shoe was untied. Yeah, all this other good stuff, but your shoe was untied. What is it that we're doing to push everybody to the next level? So my thing with my challenge with all of our percussion guys is to say, well, look, what's the highest level that we can achieve from a drumming perspective? Because we have the most talented guys in the world on these drums. I mean, anything they set their minds to. My daughter, every now and then she'll send me a videotape. She's in school, in graduate school now, but she'll send me a videotape of some guy playing something. I'm like, man, this guy's awesome. But just because he's not one of my kids, that doesn't mean I can't be pulling for him. And that's the thing I would like to see. When I first arrived here at Bethune-Cookman, and I used to look at the drum lines in the state of Florida. And one of my biggest pet peeves was organization. I used to see the guys when they would pull the drums off, they just drop them on the ground. So I said, I can't go to every drum line in the state of Florida, but I know you're going to watch Bethune-Cookman. And if Bethune-Cookman puts their drums in a certain way, you're going to do that. And eventually, and every year, I used to have a target that in the state of Florida, I'm going to teach everybody how to do this. Next year, we're going to work on this. Okay? You take a little simple thing. You take the way that we play when we're in our block, right? Well, when I initially arrived here, we used to stand in one square. Snares, tenors, quints, bass, cymbals. Well, when I used to listen to the drum line, I couldn't hear all the parts. So I'm working, I'm listening. I can't hear it, because everything is kind of running together for me. So that's why I end up pulling the quints out and pulling the tenors out. But everybody thought, oh, you're trying to show off the tenors, you're trying to show off the quints. It just had to do with me being able to hear those guys in the line. Then as time progressed, other drum lines started doing the same thing. But their perception was, hey, let me show this group off. Let me show this group off. But for me, it just came out of, I need to be able to hear the parts. And I can hear the parts better if I put you in this position versus the original position that we were in. So, like I say, just showing love to everybody, whatever we can do to support each other in our communities. We're all in one big, community. And I think the more that we push each other and the more that we help each other grow and stay positive, it's, the world is out there for us. I mean, like I say, drumming wise, some of the things that these guys are doing, I mean, it surpassed anything that I was doing when I was in their age. So my encouragement is, hey, keep doing it and keep dreaming. I'm looking for, the next great thing. But like I said, we got a lot of great drum lines out there. And we just hope Bethune-Cookman is in that conversation and they continue to be in the conversation. We just try to do the best we can here.
Well, I wanted to say this, and this has just been a pleasure for you a blessing for you to come on and talk to us and let us know about sudden impact down at Bethune-Cookman. And I will say, let us say this, we did put you at the top #1 for 2021 top HBCU drum lines. You were our #1 pick, right? So as we get ready to close out, as EP is going to go ahead and close us on out here, I just want to say thank you. We were able to track you down and we appreciate your time and coming on.
Well, hey, I would just like to say thank you for having me on. This is probably one of the first few situations I've actually done like this. It's kind of hard for me to kind of talk. It may not seem that way, but I'm kind of real reserved for the most part. But I think you guys are doing some great things, and I had opportunity to watch some of the other episodes, and I think you guys are doing some great job. So, like I say, thank you for having us on here, and we look forward to seeing some more episodes in the future.
Yeah, EP.
Yes, I want to say thank you, for taking time out your day, busy day, teaching lessons, to come on our cast. I want to thank everyone out there for tuning in and listening. Don't forget to hit the like, subscribe button, Facebook, Instagram, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Pandora. Like I always say, this is for the culture. It's not for us. But tune in. Next episode, we got some good stuff coming up in the future. Everybody take care till next time.
You guys have a great evening. Be safe. We look forward to seeing you next time. Have a good night.
Take care.